Today we are covering section 7.6, find the original number or the base. Example 1, use the percent formula to solve for the original number. 150% of what number is 120? 150% of what number is 120? So let's convert this into an algebraic equation. 150% is 1.50 or 1.5 because zeros at the end of decimal numbers do not affect the value. Or we can convert that into a fraction, 150 over 100, since percent tells you how many hundredths you have. Let's convert it into a fraction. So 150 over 100 of, before a number is a multiplication, so of what number is times, and I'll use n to represent what number, is 120 means equals 120. Any form of is, whether past tense or plural or whatever, like was or were, means equals. We can cancel out 1 0 on top with 1 0 on the bottom. 15 on top can cancel out with 10 on the bottom by dividing each by 5 to get 3 and 2. So we have 3 over 2n equals 120. To get rid of a fraction that's multiplying a variable, multiply each side by the reciprocal of the fraction flipped upside down. So now we can cancel out 2 on top with 2 on the bottom and 3 on top with 3 on the bottom when multiplying. So we're left with n isolated on the left side. 120 on top cancels out with 3 on the bottom. If you divide each by 3 to get 40 and 1. And 40 times 2 is 80. 80 over 1 is 80. So n equals 80. And let's check the answer. Let's see if 150% of 80 really is 120. So 150% of 80. Let's see if that's 120. Anytime you're dealing with numbers that end in 1 or more zeros, it's usually better to convert the percent into a fraction. It's a little bit easier. So 150% is 150 over 100. Of before a number is a multiplication, so of 80 is times 80, is 120, means equals 120. You can make that 80 over 1 if that helps you, but let's cancel out 1 0 on top with 1 0 on the bottom, and then another 0 on top with another 0 on the bottom. 15 times 8, let's work that out. 8 times 5 is 40, carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12. 120 over 1 is 120. 120, of course, does equal 120, so we get a true equation. So n equals 80 must be the correct answer. 150% of 80 really is 120. Anytime you have a percent bigger than 100%, the is number is going to be greater than the of number. And 120 is greater than 80. It's a 1.5 times greater than 80. 150% of something is 1.5 times that number. Now let's look at example 2. 662 is 33.1% of what number? 662 is 33.1% of what number? Okay, let's use the percent formula. Let's convert that question into an algebraic equation. So we have 662 is, which means equals, and then 33.1%, we can make that 33.1 over 100, but let's convert that into a regular decimal without a percent. To do that, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So 33.1% is equal to 0.331. And then of before a number is a multiplication. So of what number is times n, or times any variable you want. Since n is being multiplied by 0.331, to get rid of the 0.331, do the opposite and divide each side by 0.331. We can cancel 0.331 divided by 0.331 is 1, and 1 times n is just n, so the 0.331s cancel out. And now let's work out 662 divided by 0.331. Always put the top number on the inside and the bottom number on the outside of the box. The number on the outside cannot be a decimal number, so move the decimal point to the end of the number, 3 places to the right. To balance it out, do the same thing for the other number. If there's no decimal point, put the decimal point at the end of the number and as many zeros as you need. 1, 2, 3. Once the decimal point is at the end of the number, you don't need it anymore. So it's 662,000 divided by 331. 331 goes into 662 2 times, exactly. And then there are 3 zeros at the end of the number, so we need 3 zeros at the end of the number in our answer. So n equals 2,000. And let's check the answer. Let's see if 662 really is 33.1% of 2,000. So 662 is 33.1% of 2,000. This time, let's make the percent into a fraction by making it over 100. So we have 662 equals 33.1 over 100 of 2,000 is times 2,000. And the advantage of making that into a fraction is now we can cancel out the 2 zeros on top with the 2 zeros on the bottom. And let's work out 33.1 times 20. Let's ignore the 0 at the end of the number for now. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. Put the 0... Since there's 1 0 at the end of a number in the multiplication problem, put 1 0 at the end of the answer. And there's 1 decimal place total in the multiplication problem, so we need 1 decimal place in the answer. 662.0 is equal to 662. So we get 662 equals 662, which of course is a true equation. So 662 really is 33.1% of 2,000. So 2,000 is the correct answer. Now let's look at example 3. Use a percent proportion to solve for the original number instead of using the proportion method. So 14 is 1/2% of what number? So this time we're using the percent proportion method, not the percent formula method that we used in the first 2 example problems. Use percent proportion method. So a proportion is 2 equal ratios or 2 equal fractions. First, let's take the percent and make it into a fraction. So 1/2% is 1/2 over 100, because percent tells you how many hundredths you have, and then equals the of number over the is number. It's always of over is. Actually, sorry, no, it's the is number over the of number. So the is number in this case is 14, so let's replace is with 14. And 1/2 times 28 is 14 because 1/2 of 28 is 14. And since these are equal fractions, if the top got multiplied by 28, the bottom must also be multiplied by 28 to balance it out. It's as if we're multiplying the first fraction by 28 over 28, and 28 divided by 28 is 1, so we're really just multiplying by 1. So the value is not affected, so the second fraction equals the first fraction. And 100 times 28 is 2,800. When multiplying by 100, just tack on 2 zeros at the end if it's not a decimal number, because 100 is 1 with 2 zeros. So we get 2,800. 14 is 1/2% of 2,800. Let's check that. By the way, we could have also replaced of with a variable such as x. And then since we have equal fractions, we could have cross-multiplied. Let's practice that really quick. So multiply the diagonals and make them equal to each other. 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 14 times 100 is 1,400. And then to get rid of a fraction that's multiplying a variable, multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the fraction flipped upside down. So that's 2 over 1 on each side. Cancel out 2 on top with 2 on the bottom, 1 on top with 1 on the bottom. So now we have x equals 2,800 over 1, which is 2,800. When you multiply the fraction, the numbers on the right. All right, let's check our answer. Let's see if 14 really is 1/2% of 2,800. Okay, so is means equals, 1/2% is 1/2 over 100. If you're dealing with a number that ends in 1 or more zeros like 2,800, it's easier to convert the percent into a fraction so that you can get zeros to cancel out. Of 2,800 means times 2,800 because of before a number is a multiplication. Now we can cancel out 2 zeros on top with 2 zeros on the bottom since we're multiplying. And 1/2 times 28 is 14 because 1/2 of 28 is 14. So we get 14 equals 14, which is a true equation, of course, so 2,800 must be the correct answer. 14 really is 1/2% of 2,800. You could also think of it mentally, 1% of 2,800. To find out what 1% of something is, you divide by 100, and 2,800 divided by 100 is 28. When divided by 100, just cancel out 2 zeros. So 1% of 2,800 is 28. So 1/2% of 2,800 would be half of 28, which is 14. Okay, example 4. Use the percent proportion to solve for the rate, base, or percentage. We have 52% of 0.75 is what number? 52% of 0.75 is what number? Let's translate that question into an algebraic equation using the percent formula. Or that's what we could do, but it says to use the percent proportion method. So let's set up 2 equal ratios or 2 equal fractions. All right, so first let's convert the percent into a fraction, 52 over 100. And then it's always the is number over the of number. 52 over 100 equals is number over of number. Okay, so the of number is 0.75. So let's replace of with 0.75 and let's solve for is. Let's put n there for the is number. We have equal fractions, so we can cross multiply. So multiply the diagonals to make them equal to each other. 52 times 0.75 equals 100 times n, which is 100n. 52 times 0.75, let's work that out. 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. Start the second row with a 0. 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 2 is 37. Add the numbers. That's going to be 3900. We have 2 decimal places total in the multiplication problem, so we need 2 decimal places in the answer. 39.00 is just 39. So we have 39 equals 100 n. N is being multiplied by 100, so to get rid of the 100, do the opposite and divide each side by 100 using a fractional line to indicate division. 100n divided by 100 is 1n, and 1 times n is just n, so the 100s cancel out. I suppose you could, yeah, actually don't leave it as a fraction. Because we have a decimal given in the problem, give the answer as a decimal. 39 over 100 is 0.39. Because it's over 100, make sure the decimal goes to the hundredths place. The first decimal place is the tenths place. The second decimal place is the hundredths place. So n equals 0.39. And we can check the answer. Let's see if 52% of 0.75 really is 0.39. This time, let's convert 52% into a decimal, 0.52, of before numbers of multiplication. So of 0.75 is times 0.75. Is means equals. Let's do 0.52 times 0.75 and see if it equals 0.39. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. Start the second row with a 0. 7 times 2 is 14, carry the 1. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 1 is 36. Then add it up. 10, 1, 9, 3. There are 4 decimal places total in the multiplication problem, so we need 4 decimal places in the answer. The zeros at the end of decimal numbers do not affect the value, so it's just 0.39 or 0.39. So we get 0.39 equals 0.39, which of course is a true equation, so our answer n equals 0.39 must be correct. 52% of 0.75 really is 0.39. Anytime you have a percent less than 100%, the is number is going to be less than the of number. And since 52% is close to 50%, which is half, the is number 0.39 is close to being half of 0.75. All right, let's do one more example problem. It's a word problem. North High School's basketball team scored 850 points this season. This is 8.5% of the total points scored in the league. How many points scored in the league were not scored by North High School? Okay, so 850 points scored by North High this season, which is 8.5% of the total points scored in the league this season. So 8.5% of all points scored in the league this season. And then it's asking how many points scored in the league were not scored by North High School. How many points this season were not scored by North High in the league? Okay, so let's use the percent proportion method. So 8.5%, let's convert that into a fraction. That's 8.5 over 100, then equals, and then it's always the is number over the of number. Okay, so the is number is 850, so let's replace is with 850, because 850 points is 8.5% of all points scored in the league. We're trying to figure out the of number. Let's replace of with n, or any variable you want. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we can do this. 8.5 is equal to 8.5. So let's replace 8.5 with 8.5. And now you can see that 8.5 times 100 is 850, because when you multiply a decimal number by 100, you move the decimal point 2 places to the right, since 100 is 1 with 2 zeros. And you can put as many zeros as you need at the end of a decimal number, and that's going to give you 850. And since these are equal fractions, if the top got multiplied by 100, the bottom must also be multiplied by 100 to balance it out. So really, we're just multiplying by 100 over 100, and 100 divided by 100 is 1. So we're really just multiplying by 1, which does not affect the value, so the second fraction equals the original fraction. And 100 times 100 is 1,000. Sorry, it's 10,000, because 1 times 1 is 1, and there's 4 zeros total in the multiplication problem, so we have 4 zeros in the answer. So n is 10,000. 10,000 points were scored by all the teams in the league this season. And then you can check the answer by seeing if 850 points really is 8.5% of 10,000. Oh, it's asking how many points were not scored by North High. Okay, we know that there were 10,000. We just figured out that 10,000 points were scored in the league total this season. So let's do 10,000 minus the 850 points scored by North High. So 0 minus 0 is 0. 10 minus 5 is 5. We had to borrow from the 0 to make that 0 a 10. Anytime you borrow from a 0, the 0 becomes a 9. 9 minus 8 is 1. But you have to borrow to make that 0 a 9. So that 0 becomes a 9, and this 1 becomes a 0. So it's 9,150 points were not scored by North High this season. But 10,000 points total were scored by all the teams in the league this season. And to check the answer, you could see if 850 really is 8.5% of 10,000. 8.5% is 8.5 over 100. Of 10,000 is times 10,000. Cancel out 2 zeros on top with 2 zeros on the bottom when multiplying. 8.5 is equal to 8.5, and 8.5 times 100 is 850, because when you multiply by 100, you move the decimal point 2 places to the right putting as many zeros as you need at the end of the decimal number. And that's going to give you 850. So 850 equals 850, which is a true equation. So 10,000 points total must be correct. 10,000 points total minus 850 points scored by North High equals the 9,150 points not scored by North High this season. And that concludes section 7.6, find the original number or the base. Thank you.